Oh, let me just also get rid of what's.
Welcome back to Project 13.5. My name is Maria Vitoratos, and I am live streaming from Dubai English Speaking College here at Desk Careers. I am joined by the amazing Rosa Bullock, who is the founder of Socate. And today we're going to be discussing all things personal branding and how one woman's journey became an organization, an incredible enterprise at that. Welcome, Rosa. It's so great to have you here today.
Good morning, Maria. Thank you very much for having me.
I am so excited. I know we've had conversations in the past. I feel like I know you really well, but I want to bring this conversation to our public platform again. Our 13.5 program, just to bring it into context, is an enrichment program we put together here at Desk to help our young graduates really prepare for that transition to the next part of their journey, whether it be their employment journey or their academic journey. And personal branding is something that we are talking quite a lot about, but what we want to do is understand it from the angle of how does a brand really relate to a young graduate, and really what does that mean? I mean, this trend that we're hearing right now about personal branding, what does it mean in the context of someone's life? So let's start with introducing Rosa, the woman behind the enterprise.
Bless you. Maria, thank you so much. So to introduce myself, guys, it's so wonderful to be here today. Yes, as Maria said, my name is Rosa and I'm the founder of Socate. So we're a communications agency and we're based in Dubai, but we also have a very small footprint in the UK. So my journey personally, I've been in the Middle East now for, coming up for 8 years. As an individual, I came here for 2 years thinking I'll just pop and live there for a little while and come back, but I have never gone there. And then home is now here for me. So I actually personally came here to work for a communications agency, an advertising and PR agency. But what I quickly saw when I started to work and started to kind of garner connections was that actually our industry, so the comms industry here, was quite black and white and quite a sales led industry really. So when I was going on, although I was a PR manager, when I was going on business development calls, and business development meetings, I was finding that I was kind of told to sell to my clients or potential clients rather than actually listen to what do they need and when do they need it. Anyway, that being said, that particular job ended up being a stepping stone job for me. And then I found myself doing bits of freelance work and kind of out networking. Whilst I was out networking, I started to get some clients and started to get a lot more connections than I was able to get in my previous role, which then really brought Socate to reality for me. I found that on chats with my partner, we were saying, well, you could actually do this yourself. And I actually come from an entrepreneurial background. So both my mum and my dad have their own businesses in the UK. And I'm not the kind of person that you can kind of pop an idea there and I leave it. I was like, yeah, do you know what? I can. So Socate was born nearly 6 years ago now. So it's our birthday next month. And yeah, we're a communications agency. We specialize in PR, social media, content creation and copywriting. We have kind of wider verticals that include events and design. But as an agency of 6 years, we're 13 people with additional support of interns. So we specialize in those kind of 4 verticals, if you like. And yeah, personal branding has been incredibly important in that journey for me.
Wow. Like, let's take a breath here. And what we haven't heard you say is, what are you doing when you're not taking on the world with Socate? Like, really, Rosa, I mean, you make that just sound so smooth and, you know, this is what we do. It's incredible. I know that you're also a mom. You have a young child. We have been going through a global pandemic. The organization has been hit hard and you found your way through it. You found opportunities through that. That says a lot about you as a founder and what you are doing to maintain this momentum. Definitely something that we need to be talking about. How has that changed how you do business, taking your team through the pandemic?
So when we look at last year, that wonderful year of 2020, yeah, it was an interesting one for each and every one of us for many different reasons, I'm sure. And I remember vividly the day we decided to work from home. And I then remember the kind of 3 weeks after that where I answered 90% or calls from my clients, and 90% of our business said, we're pausing. We don't know what's happening. Look at the world. And I also, in that process, was sat at home, and I don't love technology, I'll be honest. Technology is not my strong point. So I sat there for the first couple of days on my telephone, hiding behind a normal call, to the point that Tazeen, my colleague, said, Rosie, you've got to get on Zoom. And I was like, oh no, and at that point, I think I was actually in denial. I was like, we'll be back in the office in a few weeks. Anyway, we weren't. So we went onto Zoom. With that drop in business, like I say, it was a considerable drop for us. We stayed together, though, as a team throughout the whole of the pandemic, which I'm incredibly proud of. Of course, we had to adjust salaries. We adjust our way of working. We also adjusted what we sold to our clients. So we went very much back to basics. And in that, we went back to, as PR professionals, we were also trained to write. So we looked at content creation for clients from a copywriting point of view. We looked at, instead of managing your full social media, supporting clients with just elements of their social media to keep them professional. So we really, really went back to our very kind of literal toolkit, if you like, of skill set, which was great. It was great and different. We spent a lot of time working on our visibility ourselves, which it has kind of showed the results as we kind of exited last year and into this year as well. The visibility was key. Again, from a personal branding point of view, so everything being digital, we had to focus heavily on digital and what our presence looked like. And then from the flip side to that, me as a mother, I found that Ada, my daughter, is 4, so kind of coming up to 3 as we hit lockdown. All of a sudden, I was like, I've missed kind of 3 years of her life almost by going to work early, coming back from work late. So I did love being locked down because we had breakfast together and we had dinner together. And it got normal that I would say she used to come in this way and she'd come in a different, and I'm sure maybe Maria, we had a call where she arrived in Elsa's dress and she'd run out and she'd come back as Aurora, but it got to being quite normal really. And I quite like that because I'm somebody that's quite happy to mix my personal life and my family and what I do on a day-to-day basis with my business, because we're quite a B2C organization as well. So yeah, it was really interesting. It was really hard, but we have come out the other side, and I'd say we've come out stronger, and I'm very, very proud of that.
Absolutely incredible. Okay, Rosa, let's talk about this word branding. What does it really mean, and how does it apply to a regular person, not an enterprise?
Okay, sure. What we think about from a branding point of view, and if we're to look at it more textbook and certainly more historically back to when I studied, which is a couple of years ago. Okay, it was quite a few years ago. We would think about branding, and the kind of first thing people think about is a logo. And you're looking at your company's branding. But actually the person behind the business, or the person that sat within your team, that person and their own kind of presence is actually incredibly prevalent at the moment. And it is possibly the hot topic. Also, if we're to bring it to reality, what we would usually see, or what we saw historically, was a face-to-face interview. Well, these days, when you're looking down that recruitment process, either being employed or the employer, we're actually looking at doing so many of these steps digitally before we actually get face-to-face. Pandemic or no pandemic, video CVs are so important, and the digital presence of the World Wide Web and social media. One of the first things I actually do as an individual when I have either interns applying or team members is I delve into social media. I delve into Google and I see what can I find out about that person. Even before we know each other, it's like, well, what do they look like online? And that's your brand. And with that, there's so many different ways to be able to think about the digital side of stuff. It's scary how important it is and how visible you are to potential employers, to new people that you meet, and how your reputation actually sits with you. And once something goes online, once something is open online, it's very hard to lose it. So it's actually something that has to be kept up to date a lot. Also, if I wasn't to talk digitally and look at the more face-to-face things of side of things, even down to what do we wear? How are we perceived by the people that we meet? There's so many considerations these days. It's gone a long way from just a CV or that face-to-face chat of being polite and friendly.
So this is really exciting for me as a careers practitioner, because what I'm hearing you say is your presence online is long lasting. You want to really pay attention to that presence, become very consciously aware of what you're putting out there. And for me as a practitioner, I'm thinking that's really exciting, because that means as an individual, I am now putting out my brand. And that means that I should be applying to organizations that really align with what I'm putting out there. So I think the trick then for a young person watching this, or if a parent is watching this, or maybe even the owner and founder of an organization, in that when you're searching for that right job or that right candidate, what you want to be doing is aligning with the presence of that individual and their brand, and does it align with the vision and the values of the enterprise. So that's very exciting if it's done consciously. But we know that with young people, sometimes they're unconsciously posting on these social brands thinking, what's the big deal? Who's really going to look at this? So you're saying, actually, as an owner, I look at social brand. So do you think that in certain industries, for example, your industry, that when you are taking on new candidates, that you are looking for those creative, out of the box risk takers? Would that be a brand of a person that you would find, yeah, we'd like to have someone like that on the team? Or does it align more with who your client base would be, in that, you know what, we need you creative, but our clients wouldn't appreciate that kind of a brand of person?
I think it's a good split, actually, to be honest. And in that, I think it's a split because whilst we are naturally creative in what we do for many of our clients, whether that's from a PR or social media point of view, I like to be able to see a passion for the industry that we work in. So if I was looking for a social media exec or a social media manager, but they weren't present on social media, they may have their own reasons, don't get me wrong, but that would be an instant a flag for me, like, are they that interested about it? But also, if they are pushing the boundaries on social, why are they doing that? So are they doing it because of a global trend? And it's a trend to piggyback off the back of what has happened globally at some point? Or are they doing it from a less kind of ethical point of view just because they think it's cool? And with that, how is it disrespectful what they're doing, or is it okay? So from the sense of view that if I can use an example as well, there was and this was actually for a full-time position, but it was a couple of years ago. Obviously, in the region that we're in, I looked through, and it was for a social media exec, and I looked through social profiles, and they were present on all of them bar one. Okay, cool. Everyone has preferences. I am open to that. But the only content that they were putting live were beach shots and boats. And we all know that naturally there's bikinis and so forth. And it was just too much, because then if I was to put that individual in front of a client who also could do the same, we naturally do. If you're going out for lunch with a group of friends and they say, oh, Sarah Smith is coming, you might go, oh, who's Sarah Smith? Like, that web is very easily kind of weaved into new people discovering you and so forth. So it was just too much, because I found that if some of my slightly more corporate clients, and even my B2C clients, came and looked, then it was just too much skin for the region that we sit in. If that's probably a good way to put it.
That's a great way to put it. How far back do you go? So I'm thinking in context of an 18-year-old, their argument is, by the time I look for a job, we're talking 5 years from now. How far back do you go as a founder? Would you go back at 1 year, 2 years, 5, 10? How far back are you looking for patterns?
A few years, I would say. But then when I think about my own kind of social sweep, that when all of this kind of Socate started, I was a lot more looking back. I went right back to the very beginning, because in a non-industry specific agency, and I'll try and use a different example than us as well in a second, but in a non-industry specific agency, we have worked with education and childcare and so forth. We've equally worked with like banks and insurance companies. So when we're looking at the kind of education and childcare, well, if we're doing things that are very child-led, I want to see what they were like as a child, like what it is very much in the values. And equally, I think the values of a company's values versus the person and their existence, they do need to be aligned. But also from a, like, what do people wear? It goes so far these days. So yeah,
Wow.
a few years for me, but me personally, I went right back to the beginning to evaluate my own personal brand and worked out if there were certain things that shouldn't really be there.
The power of social media. Let's go into a little more fine detail. So let's narrow into what people think branding is about. So in the work that I do in meeting different professionals and also looking at the brand of desk careers, I always think branding is about a logo, a color, a font. Is that branding, or does branding go even deeper than that?
No, it goes even deeper than that. Look at your tone of voice, the way you describe yourself. What is that introductory sentence? Maria, what is it that you do for a living, for example? I do this, and why do I do it? All of that tone of voice is your branding. Whether you turn up, and I know you love red lips some days, whether you turn up with your red lips or your nude lips, that is branding. What you're wearing, your clothes, the way you write things, the way you position sentences, all of that is your personal brand. So outside of what you look like and what your social media grid looks like, or your kind of Twitter feed, it's also into the writing, the visuals, and reputation. Look at reputation management, of thought, how other people perceive your brand. If someone was to describe me, what would they say about me and my character? Yeah, it's a lot wider.
Wow. Okay, Rosa, tell us about how Socate helps individuals with branding and personal branding work.
Okay, sure. So from an individual's point of view, there's a couple of key things that we do. One of them is within our PR department. So we look after spokespersons within organizations. So spokespersons and thought leaders within industries. So we may have a medical thought leader. We have a business setup thought leader. So why are they a thought leader in their industry? Because they're knowledgeable, they've got knowledge and expertise and experience over a span of time within the region. So we look after their online and offline profile, looking for media opportunities within publications, interviews, perhaps on TV or radio, or speaking opportunities. So with that, we re-communicate on their behalf. So looking after their profile, we communicate their knowledge and expertise in the form of contribution articles or interviews with the right target media for their audience. So what does that do? It allows that person to build the building blocks of PR and brand and get their name out there. So we might do that on behalf of the company and look after a spokesperson, but we also do it on behalf of just the spokesperson. Because sometimes we find that the bigger the company that you work in, you can sometimes, however good your knowledge and expertise be quite a small fish in a very big pond. So we have a lot of individuals that will come to us as an individual, because they know in order to position their personal brand well for future and for their next endeavor for their career, that they also need to position themselves well themselves. So that's one of the things that we do. Another thing that we do from a social media point of view, because we are very visible through social media, the natural thing that we find with individuals, so again, talking from a personal brand, is that the consistency isn't there. So they might post once a week on LinkedIn, they might have an Instagram feed that's a blurred mix of their lawyer corporate lifestyle and their 3 triplets at home. So we help individuals to build consistency into their social media by either complementing their current posting plan. And with that, many people don't have a posting plan. It's much more ad hoc when they happen to have 10 minutes to be on LinkedIn. And we also help them create a strategy and an identity through their social media. Now, for some people, that's more important than others. Some people are very clear with the kind of the colors that they would like to use through their social media. And if they're going to put a quote live, they don't want to just steal the quote from Google. They want to put it into a colorway. So there are 2 ways that we look after individuals within the agency. Just to draw on color, a good analogy of that as well is looking at when you're thinking about yourself. Do you think about yourself as strong and bright colors, or do you think about yourself as more calm and pastels? that actually is a difference when people are looking at you as to how they perceive you. Because don't forget, perception is your first perception is not easy digitally to influence. It's what they see is what they get.
How do they even know where to begin when your team are sitting down? I mean, I'm just hearing what you're saying and thinking, when you're sitting down with an individual and asking them these questions, they're definitely self-reflecting and thought-provoking type bigger life questions. How do you begin with an individual and helping them to elicit what these answers would be?
It depends how important it is to them as well. Don't forget at this stage, depending on how much you're going out from an individual point of view or how much you are within a larger organization. So how do they start as to where they begin? It's how important it is based on their industry and also their expectations. So if somebody is within quite a large organization and their profile is looked after by the organization they deliver, they may not need to think too much about social media and not think too much about their own presence. Alternatively, the other thing that they may need to look at also, though, is at what stage of the journey do they need to do this? Is it now or is it later? Another thing to think about with that is to just close, like, it can all be closed off. You can try and keep yourself offline. And then it comes back to the more fundamentals of only when you meet people. But it's incredibly important for everyone. So I've kind of gone in a full circle on that, haven't I? Because it is so important, and I'm so passionate that it is important.
It's so important, so important. You know, what's just come to my mind, and I'd love to hear your take on this, is the larger the organization, it's almost like the individual in front of me. So if they work for a large organization and I'm not happy with their service, I remember the organization. I'm like, you know, organization X has really bad customer service, but the smaller the enterprise, or, you know, the smaller it is, I don't think of the enterprise, I think of the person and think, I don't want to work with this person again. Is that fair? I mean, how do we work around this concept of, if you work for a large enterprise, suddenly as an individual, you become almost invisible. It's the brand that's overpowering. But if you're building a small business, if you're just building something, although the enterprise is an entity, the individual actually can make or break the brand reputation.
Yeah, very true. And it's hard to see how we can get away from it. I'd more look at it in the sense of aligning. So during that kind of recruitment process, I look at Soccate's values. And this is probably best related to me. I look at our values and I look at how that person can sit alongside our values and also kind of emulate them in a hope that that individual is seen in the same way as the other team members. And even back to when the first person that I did recruit, I needed that person to work aligned rather than come in with a whole new wave. Now, as you grow bigger, it is nice to also welcome in some new thoughts, some different ways, because equally one size doesn't fit all. But it is quite hard to find the right people as you start to grow, and also for us being non-industry specific, because we have very different clients. We do go through a process of aligning the right person that's within our team to that client. Because whether that's initially on skill set, of course, but also on values, because we have so many different cultures here, and also we have different deliverables for our clients. But it's very hard. Aligning values would be my best thing. And some of the kind of the recruitment tools that they use these days are quite useful to working out who should work with who and so forth.
So much to learn. Do we need to study marketing to be good at personal branding? Do we need to really go into that kind of detail at university if this is what we want to be doing in our career?
I would say no. I'd say if you want to be considering personal branding and making it a point of your own uniqueness, so your USPs, I wouldn't say you need to study marketing. I think you just need to, as you're kind of embarking on your career journey, decide whether you want to be, and it's not an introvert or an extrovert side of things, but do you want it to play an important factor in your career journey? If so, where do you want to be? Where do you want to focus with that? And there's a lovely lady, and I can't remember her name now, but she's known for always wearing turquoise glasses. Maria, you might be able to help me. There's a Natalia. Anyway, I'll find it and I'll drop it on the chat. And she's known for her turquoise glasses, and she's kind of built a brand around that. And you'll see the turquoise comes through in her feed and so forth. She's made a conscious decision for that to be important to her. Now, if you are going to make that conscious decision for it to be important, then you need to make conscious decisions along the way and decide which profiles are open, whether you would like to get into public speaking and contributing for magazines and go, right, okay, I'm more of an open person. If you don't see it as important within your industry, then just remember that there are tools within social media to close off and have private accounts. I know some people that have completely different names on Facebook and only their friends know, and so forth. There are ways to keep it more in the background, but the decision of whether you want to be forward facing or you'd rather have less of an existence from a personal brand is a decision to be made early on.
Wow. I mean, there's so much to learn about personal branding. Just before we bring it to an end, I can keep you on and ask you hundreds of questions, but let's bring it, and think about the top 3 taboos for anyone out there really wanting to build their brand, either to get their next opportunity for employment or to get their business up and off the ground, or just to really create, who they are on platforms. What are the top 3 taboos? Definitely don't do these top 3.
If I can bring it into a slightly different in the consideration factor. So from particularly in this region, from the point of view of what we wear, consider culture. So whether we are on a Zoom call as we are today, whether we are going face-to-face into a new job interview, asked to join a board meeting, consider who your audience is in what you wear. You can be eccentric, you can love the beach at weekends, but make that conscious decision to consider that before every step that you take or every post that you type, because it's important and it won't get lost. Another one for me is, particularly in this region, again, looking at the language that you use. Whilst we have quite a creative industry, swearing online, it isn't something we would look. I would encourage or even smile to myself. I think it's just not right. I think we need to be really respectful from that sense. And the other one for me is, from a personal branding point of view, is take every opportunity that comes your way. If you're keen to build your personal brand, take every opportunity that comes your way, and also to start to communicate that through the right channels. So to document your journeys, whether you keep it in an archive that you can throw back 2 years later of the first speaking opportunity you ever did, or to just generally document what you're doing from a day-to-day basis, because there will always be somebody younger than you that's looking up to you. So start to build that legacy really early on.
I love that. There will always be someone younger, and you know how passionate I am about empowering the youth and really creating real life role models. I think that is incredible. Rosa, it has been a pleasure as always. How can we find you? I know there will be many people that want to learn more about this and potentially reach out to you. How can we do that?
Bless you. Thank you. Find me on LinkedIn from a business point of view. I tend to keep all my business stuff there. But if you want to see a nice mix, and that's Rosa Bullock, a nice mix of the rebel of a 4-year-old, the reality of business and entrepreneurship, and also a bit of life and fashion, Instagram's by far my favorite social media platform. So my handle is Rosa ADB on Instagram. So find me there for a little bit of fun, and I love engaging with people, so please do. But from a more business sense and what Socate is up to, LinkedIn's the best place.
Thank you so much. And that brings us right to the end of another incredible conversation. Today we were speaking
Thank you so much.
to Rosa Bullock, founder of Socate here in the UAE. I look forward to seeing everyone. In a couple of days, we are going to be bringing another incredible speaker and a little surprise. So keep watching here at Desk Careers.